Hi, everybody. It's Ryan Baer and Dulcie Horwitz here today. And we are talking, this is going to be the first of a series of things we're going to do where we talk about helping people survive their remodels, right? So one of the things that we're going to be talking about today is maybe slightly more negative chapter, but I feel as an architect, what I constantly do is I crush people's dreams.
That's true.
Yeah, it's true. I do. I don't like it.
We have great ideas, and you make pretty pictures that nobody can afford.
That nobody can afford.
Yeah.
So we just thought we would categorize for you guys. There are usually small-scale dreams that are so commonly crushed for clients, and then there are medium-scale ones, and there are large-scale ones. And the weird thing is that I will say I actually have crushed these dreams for myself, every single one of them, except for one of them, which I actually did end up building for myself, or actually kind of two. But the rest of them I couldn't even afford myself.
I try not to start anything because it's going to turn into a dream that I'll need to crush.
Okay.
So I just
just avoid
leave all the tools in the shop and don't touch anything.
Yes, there you go. There you go. Maybe that's how it should be. All right. So the first level of stuff that we're going to talk about is the small scale stuff, which we have a ton of experience with. One of them is cabinet work. Yes. So this particular image, I think this guy Christopher Peacock, right?
Uh-huh.
And you have actually built cabinets that look just like this, if not better in some ways. Yeah, better.
Better, obviously. His hardware is nicer and a lot more expensive.
Yeah, that hardware is pretty cool. I will give him that. But clients always bring me pictures like this. And they go, well, this looks pretty simple. Like, no big deal, right? I mean, we can have this. And I just sigh. And we talked to a builder, and can you explain why this kind of cabinetry is way more expensive than a typical go to IKEA, get it off the rack kind of cabinetry?
The complexity to build the cabinet and have maybe a 1/16 of an inch strong of tolerance around every single piece with multiple pieces and have everything fit and adjusted takes 2 to 3 times as long easily to build this kind of cabinet than another cabinet.
Right.
And this obviously is, in addition to that, made out of walnut, which makes it even more expensive.
Right, because the quality of the wood is so pretty.
Right. They could have made it even more expensive by trying to grain match it, which makes it even worse.
Okay.
Because then when, if there's an error in the shop, you have to start all over because you lose that.
Right.
But there's, a lot of work that went into this that isn't an IKEA cabinet.
Sure, and I think that what people don't understand is that you see that there's like a piece that's in between the doors that goes all the way around the doors. That's called the face frame. And so all of these doors and drawer fronts are inside the face frame. So what Ryan is talking about when he says a 1/16 of an inch, it means that every single door has to perfectly fit inside that face frame. And I know people are like, well, let's just get rid of the face frame then. Like, no big deal, right? But then if you look at all of the kitchens and all of the magazines, that face frame around the doors adds an extra level of the detail. I mean, even if we look at the next example, even in a traditional way, that face frame that exists around all of the drawer fronts and all of the doors gives this like old world feel to it. When you see an IKEA cabinet where the doors actually kind of just meet each other, it looks modern.
Right.
It looks contemporary. You have a lot more tolerances, and so sometimes the cabinets are not as precise, right? And you can actually, it's more modular. It's not as custom. But if you just had the face frame where the doors touch each other and they're not inset inside a face frame, it's like half the cost, right? And
on this, every single drawer face or the doors on the last one, they're 5 pieces each that somebody had to make. So there's 30 different pieces to make this. And then if you have a talented architect, like Miss Dulcie, who adds a really, really pretty little cock speed detail on the inside of the drawer face.
But that's what makes it better.
Then it's only 9 pieces per drawer that somebody has to hand make. But it looks pretty.
But it has the cock speed around the door, and it has, so that's like a 9-piece door is what you're saying. Yeah. So it looks traditional and it looks super easy, but oddly enough, these beautiful kitchens that get published all the time are exorbitantly expensive. And so it's not necessarily a dream that gets crushed, but I have to explain to them how, and there are other ways of working with it.
It's the Pinterest curse.
It is. Yes.
It is.
It is. It's the Pinterest curse. Okay, so on a small scale, really nice inset face frame cabinets are oftentimes not affordable. Another thing, and we were talking about this earlier, most of the clients that hire me are somewhere between modern and contemporary. And steel doors and windows span that, because there's something about them that is kind of modern and very cool and kind of clean. But there's also something about that's kind of old worldy, you know, and it's so unusual too. It's not like what you see everywhere. And yet when a client brings me a photo like this, I just sigh.
If you've ever had a budget, if you've ever needed a budget for anything in your life, you probably can't afford those.
Right. I mean, I think you were saying earlier that it's $500 a square foot or something like that.
California, it's Title 24. You still need to meet energy requirements, so insulated glass on these, they're almost 2 inches thick and $400 to $500 a square foot, not installed, and they only take 8 to 9 months to make.
Right. So, and the other thing too is that what makes these in particular really beautiful is the thinness of the muttons and the frames and all that.
Right.
And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time that comes from single glazing, which in California we have Title 24, like you said.
Right.
Which means that the energy efficiency of a single glazed window is,
nothing.
It's nothing. I mean, basically you experience.
They're illegal.
They're illegal.
Yeah,
you experience
you
the
can't put
weather
them
that's happening outside, inside. So what tends to happen is the muttons and the mullions and the stiles and the rails, those are the horizontal and the vertical pieces on the window, thicken up. So they don't look maybe as thin and as beautiful as some of these examples. So sometimes it's very hard to get the muttons to be thin enough. But if you do Hope windows or some of those that you can get that, but like you were saying, then the glass itself becomes 2 inches thick.
Right.
And didn't you say that you just costed a job and it was like 1.2?
1.2 million for all of the doors and windows for a 10,000 square foot house.
1.2 million. How big is a house?
10,000 square feet.
So big size.
And that's a cost with true divided light, as they would have been made traditionally a long time ago.
And what that means for those who don't know, so modern windows, it's just one big sheet of glass, and then they apply the grid on top. But a true divided light means that each piece of glass is actually separated by steel in this case.
Right.
And it's one of those things that you would never know if you didn't know. But when you look at it and you see a grid on top of a big sheet of glass, subconsciously you know it's cheaper or that it's fake.
Right.
There's part of you that just gets it. So the people who want the real stuff, they want the true divided light. So go back, you were saying true divided light.
Right. So I mean the company the installer from Hopes that came out just finished Oprah's house.
Okay.
So if you're not Oprah, you probably can't afford this either.
I know.
So if you thought the picture was pretty and you don't have Oprah money, pick something else.
I know. It's so sad. And you can work with your architect to find another thing where it looks similar, or maybe it's but oftentimes, I mean, in the upper right-hand corner there, that's Olsen Kundig.
Oh, yeah.
And I swear to God, I don't know where their clients come from, but you see that entire wall of glass that rotates on a manual, like whatever.
Isn't that easy? Can't you just put that in?
Why not? I mean, that's when you've got money to throw into the fireplace, basically.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
You're just inventing something fun to spend money on, which we like.
Yeah, we do.
It's just hard to find those.
If you're a client like that,
call
please
me.
Call us.
We can make it amazing.
We so can. All right. So the next one is the medium scale. All right. So this is when we're ratcheting it up, the budget stuff.
Ooh.
I know.
Ouch.
The disappearing corners. I have so many. Myself, I love this. I would want to have this in my house. And so many times, and let me just say right off the bat that this is a situation where if you're building from new, this is actually easier to achieve.
Way
if this
easier.
is a remodel, this is when you need a moment frame. So if we're looking at this exterior corner, you always have to have some sort of vertical implement like that. But even when you have the vertical column there, in order to make that corner disappear, you're talking like a steel moment frame. And even if you're not, let's say you can somehow figure out how to do this with wood framing. The cost of that door system alone is like $30,000-$40,000.
At least.
At least.
Just for the door.
Right. Now, if you add a koi pond on the corner as well, which I think is totally cool. And yes, this is a project in Santa Monica. Then basically you've got a swimming pool right up against your house.
Right.
You know, which is a completely whole other. Very cool.
A whole other element of waterproofing issues
and structuralness that goes down below. But most of the time, if this is going to be a remodel, it's very difficult to figure out something like this. Or even I just had a client send me this one a couple months ago. And lovely people. And I just felt so bad. I had to say, yeah, you're not doing that.
Yeah.
It's really cool looking, and they have a situation where it's a remodel for them. So it would definitely be a steel frame, a steel moment frame for them. And then the cost, I basically said it's going to be a $60,000 to $80,000 proposition, and she's just crushed and said, really?
At least.
I know.
And the moment frame is going to be, especially on the last one in California, is if that beautiful floating corner right there, if you push on it, like you're an earthquake,
right.
It's going to be tied, the steel's going to be tied back to steel columns, to pads, to a big grade beam system that's underneath it that keeps the whole thing from being able to twist. So you're worried about your $50,000 door, and it's going to be $150,000 just to put steel and stuff in the ground.
Right, to make sure that your very expensive doors and windows don't get twerked.
It's a $250,000 corner. But really amazing, and it looks good on TV.
I know. And again,
it would be way easier to build.
I'm sure my client
from
got
the
this
ground
from
up.
Pinterest as well.
You know,
it's part of the Pinterest curse.
They should have a tag on it that costs. The room was $1 million.
I think we should actually sit down with an HGTV episode.
Uh-huh.
I know it seems like hatery.
Oh, yeah.
But we should pick it apart. You know what I mean? And I know that they're better about it now. When I watched 10 or 15 years ago, it was...
You could point out everything that has like a 6 to 10 week lead time and how it's impossible to remodel your house in 2 days.
Yes.
Without starting 4 months early.
Yes, I almost feel like that would be a public service.
Right.
All right. So the other thing that's in the medium world is I get clients all the time, and understandably because we live in a beautiful climate here. So people want to do the indoor-outdoor Balinese kind of thing, right? Which is actually somewhat doable in our climate. And they go, well, we just want a really nice, beautiful outdoor area. And they've seen a bunch of these on Pinterest.
Right.
And
Can't we just build a patio cover for $20,000? Sure. We can.
You can't, though. Well, it's going to be at least 20, if
you can
not
if your
way more.
landscaper builds it on the side on a weekend.
Yes.
You can.
Unfortunately, I have to explain to them, this is basically almost 80% the cost of actually building something inside. Hold on a second. You've got electrical, you've got the roof, you've got waterproofing.
Some of those have heaters and lights, and people want speakers and all of this stuff.
Right. And sometimes people just want this. Okay, in my remodel world, people come to me a lot with traditional houses. Right. And they kind of want to make them
They want to turn it into something different.
And the easiest way to do that is to give them some cool eaves, right?
Right.
I can't tell you how many times those eaves have become open wood trellises that are painted. Yeah. Because they don't actually shelter a space. They're actually just actively changing the look and feel of the house. And they do it very effectively. Right. But they almost seem to always get value engineered out because they're so expensive.
Right. And unfortunately, it gets value engineered out once it's drawn and you fall in love with it.
I know.
The engineer does it. You get a permit. You get into it. And then you realize that it's just $100,000 more than you thought for your patio cover.
No big deal.
It's fine. It's fine if you have $100,000
if you have
to blow on.
No problem.
I know.
But
if you're out of money, then it ends up as some framing outside that you never finish.
And like you keep pointing out, which is true, I can draw this up, no problem, in 3D, super pretty pencil drawings.
And who's not going to fall in love with it and want it in their yard?
Exactly. And then it's always very sad.
Yeah.
So going forward, just know that these things, when you see them, they look like, it's an outdoor structure. No big deal. There's no walls.
It's just a roof.
Yeah, it's just a roof. No biggie.
A few sticks of steel and it'll be fine.
I know. DreamCrusher. Okay.
And they want it next to a pool.
Right.
Right next to the pool.
Of course.
Sure.
All right. So this is the last one, and this was the one that was. I have to say, I fell into this category. So I graduated.
We helped some clients out of this category.
We have.
In Malibu. That we talked them out of.
Exactly.
One where we would have required a bridge over the little stream for a fire truck to get a driveway back in there, to get utilities back there. But it was a beautiful lot.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just
cost
you $500,000 to get to the property.
Exactly. And you're doing the opposite of bearing the lead, which is basically that what we're talking about is that the average cost of the house here in Southern California is so high that usually this happens for me when people are friends of mine that are first-time home buyers.
Right.
It's happened so many times, and I have to be the one who crushes them, like mercilessly. But they come to me and they say, they're looking for a house, and everything's like $700,000-800,000, right?
Yep.
And they find a piece of property for, I don't know, $170,000 or $200,000, and they go, oh my God, Dulcie, I've got a great idea. Let's just go get a storage, one of these.
Shipping containers?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Let's just go get one of those. And they've seen these really cool images, right?
Cut some holes in it.
Right.
And it's magical.
And I've got this property, and it's
We'll
only
just set 'em there.
200,000, and
Right.
then we've got this, and people say that you can do these for less than 100.
Right.
So we can have a house, a really cool hip house, by the way, for less than 300,000.
Sure.
It's not happening.
It's a great idea.
And then I have to explain to them that they're going to spend, okay, well, first of all, when you get a piece of land, I mean, really banal, boring things like geotechnical information.
Yep.
Like if you have an incipient rupture, that's a good term. Incipient rupture.
Nobody appreciates that.
No, and that means you can't build in that. So even when you buy a piece of land, sometimes they've designated like building paths where it's actually been proven geotechnically that you can actually build something there.
Right.
Like you have to make sure that has been proven.
Has been done before you buy something.
Right. And then
Right.
like with your example earlier, like if you have to build a bridge for the fire department to get to your
Right.
piece of property, I mean, you can.
And the fire
easily-
department has to get to your property.
They do.
Right.
Unfortunately, they're not going to let you build a home
So
without being able to have services and police and fire and
So
all
if
of
it
that.
requys a driveway that isn't there,
And
needs
you
to
can
support a
spend
fire truck,
hundreds of thousands
50,000
of
pounds.
Oh my God. And even if it's not a bridge.
Right.
I mean, even if it's not a bridge, if it's just a regular driveway,
Right.
the civil engineering that you have to pay for that, and then the cost of the driveway, and then
Getting utilities to your property so you can use a toilet and turn a light on.
Sure, right. I mean, people go, well, I heard you can do like septic and, all this. I'm like, really? I don't,
It's
you're
like
going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in just getting the piece of property to the point where you can build
The
on
old
it.
school septic system in like the city of Malibu has turned into its own water treatment plants that every house is required to have.
Yep, and
So-
that's not cheap.
No.
No.
You can assume it's going to be cheap before you build a house where you can't flush the toilet. But there's nothing you can do once they tell you that you have to have it a certain way.
Right. So unfortunately, because of utilities, being able to get to your property,
Right.
making sure that the property can even be built on because of the soil conditions.
Drainage control.
Oh my God. So there are so many things that with a raw piece of land, it's very deceiving. You can't just go, and then let's not even...
And that's not fun money. It's not fun at all.
You never rub up
You'll never
against
see it again.
You never touch it.
It's not your shipping container that you bought for $100,000.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. You can buy a shipping container for like
$2,000. I can buy one for $2,000.
Right. But that does not make it look like the kind of now. Okay, so the common thing is that if you take cheap materials and you do unusual things with them, you've just made them expensive again.
Right.
Right. So it's deceptive to say that you can buy it. Even the prefab home manufacturers that are out there, they have kits for like $100, whatever. But the
Right.
really nice ones, the ones that you would actually want to live in, are more like $200,000-$300,000.
Right.
I mean, it's not. The cool thing about prefab is that it shows up and it is erected in a very short amount of time.
Right.
So it's not necessarily the cost.
Most of the time, they'll have utilities and stuff run in the walls, so you can just connect everything.
Right, and then go for it.
Which cuts down on 10 different steps and makes it quicker to assemble.
Sure. And there's some cost savings there.
Right.
But in order to get a nice one,
Yeah.
then you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars again. So unfortunately for me, this is like the big dream crusher that I usually... this has happened to me a couple of times where, people were so excited.
I've had people that wanted to crane these, like, well, just get a container and crane it over the house and turn it into a cabana. Or the...
By the pool.
What's the new granny flat?
Yeah, the alternate, they call it the alternate living quarter, it's ALD or alternate dwelling unit, ADU,
Right.
an
I'll
ADU.
just get one of these for $2,000
Sure.
and drop it in my backyard.
And I have to say, that's how they market them too.
Right.
The prefab companies will market, it's a perfect ADU, just,
Yeah.
buy it, order it, and you could just drop it in your backyard.
Just
and
carry
you've got
it through the side yard.
Instant income. Carry it through the side yard.
Yeah.
All right, so how do we...
If that thing's sitting on the ground and it has a toilet in it,
it's not going to just be
where does all
created
that
in.
stuff go?
I know. Interesting.
Right.
When you think it through.
Huh.
So on this one, how do we end it? It's kind of negative. I mean, what are we saying? We're just saying...
Unfortunately, being, an architect and building things for people...
Right.
A lot of times giving people the right advice, like you bought an $800,000 house, you thought you were going to do a $100,000 remodel, but you want to do the kitchen and the backyard and a
Yes.
bunch of stuff, and it's really $400,000.
Sure.
And your pool isn't going to be worth that when you sell it. So
Knowing this
Move.
information up front.
just move.
Exactly. Or find another house,
I mean,
right?
if you bought a house for $800,000 because that was the top of your budget, you're going to be at 1.2, and you weren't even looking at 1.2, but you're going to spend it on your remodel.
Right.
That-
So you could get for 9, maybe you could get a different house. I mean, that's
Right.
That's the thing. And so if you know some of these things going in, because it's very easy to look at some of these pictures and go, oh, we'll just do a patio cover, and it'll feel like it has more square footage.
Right.
But you don't know that patio cover is $100,000.
And a lot of the homes in our area here
Yes.
are 1950s, 1960s,
Yes.
1970s. So
Transforming them into something cool requires a ton of structural engineering.
even with really, really good engineering and budgeting and planning, which nobody wants to do,
Right.
you would need every detail on a plan from you
Right.
to know what every finish is going to cost, and nobody gets that far.
Right. Right.
But then you're peeling the onion, and you think it's going to cost something, and everything that you touch turns into something else.
right.
And then it makes a ton of sense to do this stuff at once when it's all unpeeled, and then it will cost you twice as much money as you thought.
Right, there's a get out of bed fee, like if you ask someone to come back,
Right.
then you're raising the cost of it.
Right.
So the point of it is just to know, just a little forewarning, that these things that you see that we've shown today look deceptively, simply beautiful.
Yeah.
They look like, hey, no problem, I could easily fix it into that. So this is just your, public service announcement that these things are actually really quite expensive, and just know that it'd be much more difficult than you imagine to change it into these things.
It can be done with patience and
Right.
a lot of planning and
Yeah.
a lot of money.
Sure. A lot of money.
lot
I was
of
just
money.
going to say, just save up.
Realize it's a dream, and dreams aren't free.
That's true. And attainable, but you just have to save up and know that it's going to cost. And know that you're going to have to spend on, architecture fees and all this other stuff to get it to the place where you're not going to change it and all that other, yeah.
And if you're in a situation where you're doing a remodel and you only have $300,000,
Right.
you cannot plan a $300,000 remodel. You need to plan a $200,000 remodel and see what happens.
Right.
And then if you have money left over, great. But things are going to happen over the course of that. And there's nothing you're going to be able to do
Yep.
about it once you tear your house apart.
Yep. All right. So here's to being a big dream crusher.
Cheers. Cheers to the things that you can't afford.